So Acambaro, which is the discussion, the topic of our discussion, is about 200 kilometres north of Mexico City. In 1944, this gentleman, Waldemar Julsrud, who was kind of an amateur archaeologist, he had discovered the remains of an ancient civilization, the Chipiquaro, we'll call them, and he was quite well known. He knew what he was talking about in terms of ancient figurines. And one day in 1944, he was out riding with the priest, as they probably did back then, when he noticed all this pottery sticking out from a hill. He pulled them out and he thought, you know, this is not Chipiquaro, this is something else. I don't know what it is, but I'd like to find out. So he told the townsfolk that he would pay 1 peso, which is probably like a cent, really, even though it was 8 to 12 cents in those times. It was not a lot for anything that they brought to him, but his only proviso was that it was unbroken, or if it was broken, that it could be glued back into something recognisable. So that 1 peso ended up costing him a real lot of money back in 1944. Turns out the townsfolk were digging these things up all over the town, in the countryside, you name it, they were picking them up. And this is why. There were 33,000 of these things, or more. Julsrud had a house, there were 14 rooms in his house in town, every room got filled up. He had to leave the house, he had to go and live in the country. But the interesting thing was, no one knew what the hell these things were. They're all dinosaurs. So here we have the humans. There are a lot of different people. I won't, you know, I'll pull the cursor over here and see the dude with the pointy head. You know, another of my obsessions, dudes with pointy heads. People that have viewed the collection, where'd it go? People that have viewed the collection have said they can see all sorts of ethnicities, from Polynesians to Asians. I don't know about that. I haven't seen enough of them. But if these things, these people come from the same era as the dinosaur statues, then they're very nicely dressed. They're not prehistoric savages. Again, some of them have oddly shaped heads and unusual faces. I'll just sneakily do this. A lot of them have boobs. I don't know what that's about. So, the question is, could they have all have lived together? What do people think? I think they do, because I think the sculptures are very lifelike. I mean, this dude on the right, he really looks like he would look if he was coming at you, with his neck bent like that. There's a lot of life in them, a lot of realism. It's like they really saw these things in action. But more interestingly are all the images of the dinosaurs eating people. I really think this is the single most interesting point that points to authenticity. This is not a serpent, it has got arms. In one other photo I saw there was a creature that looked kind of octopusy. This one's being strangled to death by a prehensile tail. Don't get too close to dinosaurs. Here's another poor man being strangled to death. And, you know, the guy's got his tongue hanging out. If you never saw a man being strangled with their tongue hanging out, you would not sculpt that. I would not even draw that. If I didn't watch movies, I would not even know that that happened, that your tongue came out. So, you know, look at him, his hands, he's trying to fight this beast, but he's clearly losing. Here's another poor man who looks like he's had quite a fright to be snuck up on by this monster. He's smiling because, you know, he doesn't have to worry about tea tonight. It's terrible. I mean, these are horrific images. They're horrific. This life, this world, was a complete disaster. Complete and utterly. You would not want to go out of your house every day. Look at this one. It's been snapped up and swallowed whole. I mean, really. Now this one is interesting. This is, I don't know, I'm looking, the photo's terrible, but the ear indicates something a bit more simian than a human, and the sort of flattish head. And here's another one throwing a rock at something tall, I'm assuming a Tyrannosaurus Rex or something. Maybe a monkey as well because of the ear, but you know, this is a detail. And you don't normally draw pictures of people throwing rocks or make sculptures of people throwing rocks. And here's another man. I don't know what he's doing. This piece is damaged. There must have been a hand there or an arm. His face doesn't look unhappy. I don't know if he's attacking it or riding it or what he's trying to do. But we've got another one of a really happy man riding something now. Maybe it was a sport, you know, you find the monster in the swamp and you ride it. I don't know. And what the hell's this? Like, I don't know if they're going in for a pat or if he's going to eat him. You know, it looks like a woman. I mean, what is it? Like, who makes sculptures like that? But if you look at other pictures, kissing dinosaurs was what you did back then. So Gardner calls it strange philosophies, and what he's referring to is this little tableau here, which, on closer reflection, is a man kissing a monster or drinking milk. I don't know. I really don't know what's going on. But I call it kissing. I mean, and that's a lot of detail in that little face, kissing the monster.
Worshipping the baby.
Worshipping, maybe. And what about this? Like, I don't know if it's a hug or if it's a fight. I don't know what's happening. It's this one. She's got a pet. I mean, seriously, what does that look like? She's feeding a pet. Notice the boobs. A lot of them had these big boobs. Sorry. Another person with a pet. Don't know what that is. And look at this one. From the face or the head of the creature, it looks a bit of a mammal, but the tail has got spines on it. But they both look really happy, don't they? They look very happy to be together. And don't ask what this dude's doing, but they both look happy. And I can't decide if this is a hat or if it's the tail curling around about to, you know, get off my back, man. I don't know, but things weren't all bad back in the day. And look at this. What? I don't know what he's doing, if he's trying to pick him up or giving a friendly hug. Then we've got some more little figurines cuddling dinosaurs or some weird creatures. I don't know. And look at this, right? It is in man's nature to tame the wild beast. Could you ride a triceratops? And this man has got a cape on and a hat and a feather in his head. He's not a barbarian, and he's riding a triceratops. Oh, sorry, a stegosaurus. And look at this. Maybe we have to think about what we know about dinosaurs. Maybe, no, they didn't, but you could get around on a stegosaurus. Maybe Fred Flintstone wasn't too far off the mark. But dinosaurs are supposedly the progenitors of birds. Birds are very easily trained. Maybe we have to think about dinosaurs as being trainable if you got them young enough. So, what does science think about all this? That's what science thinks, because it can't stand it. It's blowing people's heads off. It can't possibly be real. So there's been many attempts at dating these things. There's been a carbon-14 in 1968. That gave it back to 4,500 BC. 1972, 3,000 to 600 BC using thermoluminescent. That was an interesting one because they didn't know what they were testing, and when they found out it was Jules-Root figures, they retracted that and then wrote, and I read this paper, it was about 8 pages long, violently denouncing their own work and saying that no, the Jules-Root figurines were only 30 years old. And in the 1990s, more tests were commissioned, and that's taken them back another 4,000 years. But no one wants to believe any of that. But there's one other thing that is going to throw a spanner in everybody's works. And it's that thing there in the photo. With, you know, this photo taken back in 1968, and there's another view of it. Does anyone recognise the shape, perhaps? Well, it's more than human, I think.
Look at the size of the head in relation.
So there it is again. Remember, collected in 1944, put together with all of these things. I put this image through a lot, because I've only got one image, I can't find any others. I put it through quite a few filters to try and find out what we were looking at before I started making great claims. Now I'm making great claims. So there it is. Some of its face begins to be discernible. So we're seeing a bit more of the face now, a bit more of the features. Looking familiar yet?